Welcome and thank you for joining us. We're here to talk about the East Beach Slough and do a deep dive on kind of the issues surrounding what's going on with the slough and how it's being planned to be managed, and what that plan entails, and kind of some bigger questions that we have. So let's jump right in. Our agenda for today is to welcome y'all. So thanks for being here. We'll introduce our staff that's including me and our other South Coast advocate that is basically kind of the lead on this. She's really diving in. We'll give a brief issue overview, kind of give you a connection to the place and space where this is all occurring on our coast. I'll give an overview of the sand sharing system. We'll talk about the plan and what it looks like and the players involved. And then we'll go to some general conclusions that we've come to and ask you to ask us some questions and let you know about the actions that you can take um, to speak out about this issue if you care to. So that's it for now. This is me. My name is Eric Swanson. I'm the Advocacy Education Coordinator for 100 Miles. So I work up and down the coast. I live in the Savannah area and I host these issue investigations the way for people to engage on issues that are affecting our coast and to hopefully advocate for them in ways that best serve their interests. We want to empower people to be able to speak out on what's going on along our Georgia coast. And Kat Montgomery is our South Coast advocate, as I mentioned. I'm going to let her introduce herself by telling us her favorite marine mammal.
Thanks, Eric. So, hi, y'all. I'm Kat Montgomery. I am the new South Coast advocate for 100 miles. So, I cover Camden, Glenn, and Brantley County. And if you know me, you definitely know that I love manatees a lot, just so you know. So, love them. Thanks, Eric. But okay, so I'm going to get started. Unfortunately, we're not talking about manatees today, though I would love to at any time. We are talking about this East Beach Slough issue. So I'm here to give you the scoop on the East Beach Slough. So what's happening is Glenn County has filed for a permit with the Coastal Resources Division's Shore Protection Committee to fill in a tidal slough that's on the East Beach on St. Simon's Island at the Massengale Park access point. So the project area proposed is about like 9 acres that's located on a portion of East Beach. The area within the project consists of wetlands, open water impoundment area, vegetated dynamic dune fields, and open sand beach. So because all of those different elements are associated with the project site. That's why the county has to file for that permit with the Shore Protection Committee. But where are we talking about? Maybe some of you are not familiar with the slough itself. Well, this is it. This is the area that the county is proposing to fill. So sometimes it's referred to as a tidal pool, but this water feature is actually a depressed wetland area that's backwater to a larger body of water. So typically sloughs are more common alongside rivers, but in this case, that larger body of water is the Atlantic Ocean. So it's a tidal slough. And with the shoreline reshaping itself over time, ocean water from high tide events became trapped in this bowl-like depression of sand. The slough area itself is roughly 2 acres, and at its deepest point, it is 4 feet deep. The county installed those bridges that you saw in the video, which I'll just play again so you can see them. Um, so the county installed these modular bridges in 2023. The sloughs themselves formed around 2022, and we'll get into more of how the sloughs got there to begin with. But the county did install those modular bridges to allow better access to the ocean and to address safety risks with crossing the slough. Because, like I said, they can get to be about 4 feet deep. But like I said, how did these sloughs even get here to begin with? We're going to go over that. I want to show you a timeline of what this beach area looked like. So these are pictures from Google Earth. And I just want y'all to we're going to take a stroll back to 2011. And this is the area that we are talking about today. So you can see this is Massengale Park. This is the public access point. There's these two access areas that folks can use to get down onto the beach. So the slough is kind of formed in this area, but here you can see in 2011, this is kind of what the beach looked like, kind of a smaller strip of sand. And then in 2012, similar shore shape going on here. In 2013, again, it's a small strip. And what I really like about this photo is you can see the wave action here. It's kind of like a fun zigzag going on. You can just see the waves. Very cool. 2014, much of the same. And then, oh my gosh, 2015, what's going on? I'm totally just kidding. There was no picture for this year for some reason. So we don't have a picture for 2015, 2020, 2022, or 2023. So just for some reason, Google Earth did not get around to taking a photo of this area. So in 2016, I'm going to think that this picture was probably taken around high tide. So it's not to say that the beach is just suddenly gone. It might have been at high tide. But in 2017, I think it's so interesting. We can see a lot of accretion kind of happening. The beaches, well, that's a bad image, but from the 2014 image, we can see, again, kind of a smaller beach strip, but by 2017, it's much wider. This shoal is forming down here, so a sand area. And then we have this kind of bump of sand. Oops, sorry about that. I clicked it. This bump of sand forming along this area. So again, not a great, not a great time to take a photo for 2018. And in 2019, we can see this area has definitely filled itself out and made an interesting kind of right angle. And we're getting more of a beach bump right in front of the Massengale Park entrance. So again, we don't have a photo for 2020, but in 2021, you can kind of see the slough, what will become the slough is starting to form. So 2022 is when the slough became like a known thing. So we're seeing it right as it began forming. And then again, unfortunately, we don't have a picture for 2022 and 2023, but in the 2024 image, this is kind of what it looks like today. This is the slough as we know her. Here are the bridges that were installed. But what I think is so interesting is just how much this beach changed in 3 years that we could see from 2021. Oop, and also, I mean, 2019, wow, look at that difference from 2019 to 2024. So, Eric, I was hoping you could talk more about why we're seeing this, why the beach changed so much in those 3 years.
Yeah, thank you, Kat. To give a little bit of background, I have a background as a naturalist, and so I'm speaking from that point of view about the natural system and how I have learned it. Along the Georgia coast, sand is always moving from the north to the south. It's coming out of rivers along our coast. It's being pushed by the longshore current, and then in combination with the Gulf Stream is moving kind of things in a southerly way. So we have sand constantly entering the system from the rivers, and nutrients as well as minerals in that water, from erosion that's happening on the mainland that then is getting moved out in the ocean, and then through wave action and storms and wind, that sand and sediment is put back up on the beach. And so what we have is a major accretion event. So we have sand being eroded, moved, rocks being eroded and moved. They have that deposition happening, being deposited out in the ocean, and then we have an accretion or an adding of our beach, adding of material to the beach. That's basically effectively kind of trapped a large runnel, that has now become a slough, a tidal slough. And so that runnel that was in front of the beach now is got all this sand in front of it. And that sand is starting to harbor plant communities and create primary dunes, which are our number one protection against storm events. These primary dunes that are forming happen because we've allowed on the Georgia coast, um, for rack to accumulate, and that's really important. There are some areas in our country where we don't let a rack accumulate, and that leads to a lack of sand buildup. That rack decomposes, has seeds inside of it, and forms our dunes. So these primary dunes, our first line of defense, are forming and growing as more rack is pushed up by those high tides event. That happens on the outside of the slough as well, if it's tidal, as slough water comes in at high tide events, it has rack in it, it pushes that rack to the edge of the slough, and that creates another area for plant growth and also for the development of larger dunes. I think we can go to the next slide, Kat. Yeah, so this is a really great picture taken from a drone that shows that the slough is actually tidal because it's connected by these riffles or runnels that come off of the slough and that go out into the ocean. So as our tides fluctuate during storm events as well, water comes into the slough and drains out. The really interesting about sloughs is that they can actually develop over time and become more permanent as water brings in sediment. That sediment settles out in the slough and creates an almost clay-like bottom to the bottom of the slough so that the water can't infiltrate as quickly as it would in, say, sand. For the most part, we don't see that happening to a great extent on this slough. What we do see is there's quite a bit of drainage that happens. If it's not being tidally filled from high tides, we see the water level dropping kind of drastically, and that happens because of evaporation, that happens because of drainage through the tides, but that also happens because it's a natural system and that water needs somewhere to go and it goes into the sand and it filters out that way, or it runs back towards the ocean. And that's often where we have these riffles forming and going back to the beach. So even if we tried to stop that riffle from happening, there still is going to be the desire for this water to move if it can't infiltrate. And so oftentimes we have runnels that become reconnected with the ocean during storm events, or often through other natural processes like extreme high tides that we have um, in our fall and in our spring. I think we can
Awesome.
go
Yeah, I just want to
to
make
the
sure
plan.
also.
Yeah,
Yeah, so the plan I will get into. I did just want to say that, we wanted to show that large timeline of photos so that you could just really get a sense to see how dynamic our shorelines are and how they're constantly shifting naturally, and they're influenced by the weather and by tide systems. So that's why we took you on that pictorial timeline. But yeah, oh right. And then Eric was going to talk a little bit more about that sand sharing system that would affect those
yeah.
beaches.
Yeah, so this is a zoom out of our coast just to talk about sand sharing systems and how they create our coastline. So our coastline is basically the seventh kind of iteration of coastlines that go from here in our youngest at the Holocene Barrier Island complex to the Pleistocene, which is the next youngest, and then all the way through the coastal plains, all the way up to the Okefenokee. So our coastal plain is a series of barrier islands, all sand that's weathered from the Appalachian Mountains, moved through our coast and been deposited over millennia. So a very old system, a very dynamic system, as Kat mentioned, that moves sand from the north out the rivers to the south and is depositing it along the edge of our coast and basically forming these islands. That natural system leads to some areas, for example, here on Jekyll Island, where we've had large events of erosion. Jekyll Island is mostly Pleistocene and a little bit Holocene for the Barrier Island, but we have large accretion events in other places where we have larger rivers draining. So we have Little St. Simons, Sea Island, and St. Simons being formed in front of a larger barrier island, which is kind of the St. Simons complex, I should say. So we think of this generally as a system that builds and is constantly building, but also eroding. So dynamic in the way that we have movement of sand. That movement of sand is, like we said, always north to south, unless there is a massive hurricane that is carrying with it large amounts of sand coming from the south and moving northward. That is a rare event as well, and not as common as you might think from a dynamic standpoint. We don't have specific measures of the amount of erosion that are happening day to day. What we do have is a geological look at how erosion and accretion has happened over thousands and thousands of years. And so we know that when we think about this as a natural system, we are always moving sand out in the ocean. The ocean is throwing it back up and it's building these. Those other plant communities that we mentioned, the rack leading to growth of our sea oats, that's our first line of defense for creating those primary dunes. And so that natural system is what we think about as forming these islands, a single plant basically, and a bunch of abiotic forces like wind and water and the movement of tidal action and waves all combine to create these really dynamic places that we love and we love to enjoy.
Awesome. Thank you for diving in, digging in. That's a better metaphor. Digging into the sand sharing system with us. So, we wanted to bring all of that up to you before we got into what the plans are for the slough. Because the plan, as it is being proposed today, is to use sand, on-site sand, that's again part of that sand sharing system, and move it to fill the slough area to flatten it out. So, yeah, let's dig into what these plans are. Our organization was made aware of this project in August. We were invited by the county, so by Glenn County, and by the project engineers with Longleaf Consulting. They're the folks who are doing this project. So they had a meeting for community stakeholders where they wanted to outline their plans. So in that meeting, they let us know that they were seeking to fill the slough due to access and public safety reasons. And they're also claiming possible water contamination because they believed the slough to be stagnant. And they also cited a drowning risk associated with the slough. Though there hasn't, to our knowledge, there has not been a drowning incident that has occurred. It's just, since it's an open body of water, it's just, a risk that occurs when there is an open body of water. So in this delineated site map from the project application, you can see that here. So they are looking to take 11 inches of sand from this area that is above the mean high water line. And so they'll dig out this area 11 inches deep and they will use it to fill this southern portion of the slough. And then here we have the property area split up by acres. So again, this shows the proposed acreage that will be impacted and what the order of operations for the project are. So they want to drain the slough, again, scrape 11 inches of sand from the on-site borrow area and then move it to this area. They did consider using off-site sand, but that just would not really work for this project because it would be such a large amount of sand. It would probably take around like 100 trucks to bring in that sand. So that's just not something that the county wanted to do because that would cause a lot of traffic kind of issues bringing in that much equipment to the beach area. So they also let us know, that this project, if it went forward, they would do it during the winter time, so outside of a turtle nesting season. But we were concerned after hearing this, about this project and wanted to kind of dig in more, just because there are too many unpredictable variables like the weather and, tidal systems to accurately be able to predict how our impact in the sand sharing system will play out. Um, I also just want to note that the plans you're seeing here were created from a site image that was taken in October of last year, so October 2024. And the site that we're talking about has changed so much in that year in terms of, dune growth, and just, how full the slough is at any time, that it kind of makes the plan map, kind of useless a little bit, because we can't, we're not accurately showing what the site now looks like and how it would be impacted by this plan to use on-site sand.
Awesome.
So, oh yeah, go ahead, Eric. Sorry.
So Kat laid out some really big concerns we have. So we just want to kind of break it down from the claim side to what we know. So the application claims the slough will not dry out. What we know is that sloughs are dynamic natural systems. They sometimes transform into wetland habitat. They often, if they are not fully clay lined at the bottom through the deposition of sediment in the water, they actually become really ephemeral. And so during large rain events or during high tide events, they may have water, they may drain at other times. So what we do know is that the dynamic nature of this means that sometimes there will be water and sometimes there will not be. So a more permanent solution is needed in that regard. There is also a sighting of possible water contamination. To our knowledge, there has never been a water quality study in the area. That water quality study we would love to support. If that's something that could be done to substantiate a risk, then by all means, we believe that there should be actions taken in regard to that system of water. But it is a natural system, that it is tidal, it flushes out, it floods, it drains. Those are all things where there is movement of water, so it is not stagnant in the ways that might lead to some people thinking it is contaminated. We do know that there is an issue, that there is problems with access for emergency vehicles, right? A slough prevents emergency vehicles from accessing the beach directly. This is a great opportunity to talk about a more permanent solution for a crossover, permanent boardwalk, permanent crosswalk to be made that actually removes the impact of those vehicles going on the dune area itself as well. Many beaches have crossover areas that are utilized for this, and then stage those emergency vehicles up and down the beach during high tourist season. Leading to a much quicker response time as well. Drowning risk, as we said, is always an issue with the open body of water. We believe that there is a much easier way to talk about the slough in regards to education about its value and its really wonderful place for humans and for the environment as well, for the animals and plants that are using it. So educational signage to inform visitors of that, as well as inform them that there is always a risk of drowning if you utilize water systems. This is directly adjacent to the Atlantic Ocean. We do know that when we have water systems, there's always going to be life in those water systems. So educational signage about that could really bolster this as a thing to be proud of and the thing to value as a habitat. Um, I think our big conclusion on the claims versus fact is that this problem is a natural process. So it is able to be managed in ways that lessen the environmental impact and move away from a process that may destabilize our beach and allow for natural systems to either correct themselves or to add sand or to take away sand. But for human health and safety to be at the forefront, we need to think about this as something that is going to be always changing and always moving and work with that process. And then we just have this beautiful picture. I think this is really a key indicator of what's happening at the moment. So this is from last week. The photo was taken last week, I believe, maybe earlier in this week. And it is showing directly where we have a little bit of sand spit right here, tiny bit of sand, but that's got sea oats growing on it, and those sea oats are forming a dune. And that dune that is forming, that primary dune, with the rack accumulation, with the abiotic process that moves sand up to this area, we're going to be building dunes, and that provides the best level of protection for these buildings behind it. Primary dunes build dunes and dune systems that make our coasts more resilient to storms, more resilient to sea level rise. When we remove that layer of sand before the primary dunes, what we are inviting is a level of erosion that could ruin or displace these primary dunes, basically leading to expediting of the sand sharing process by eroding away and moving sand to another location where it's not naturally supposed to be found.
And
And
of course, Eric,
also,
I
our
also,
birds love it.
yes, I was like, tell me what kind of birds those are. I know that this is
Okay,
the blue heron,
so
I'm sure.
yeah, so we have a great blue heron flying off, and we have a great egret over here. These birds are our wading birds, so anywhere where there might be a food source, they're going to drop in and do some wadings. They're visual hunters. They're looking for things like invertebrates or fish to feed off of. We have lots of pictures, and you'll see some later of people recreating here, animals using this area to feed. It is a great place to see kind of a little microcosm of a habitat, acting as a place where blue crab and shrimp and crabs, other crab species live and thrive, along with bait fish and larger fish that eat those bait fish, and then the birds that feed off of them. Great place to see a living food web, and value as a part of our beach, a natural part of our beach.
And also, those fish eat mosquito eggs, right?
Yeah, yeah. So when we have naturally occurring bodies of water, where it's not just a depression that we've dug somewhere, um, the natural system actually works for us and does you know, eliminate a portion of the mosquito eggs for sure.
Nice. Thanks, Fish. So yeah, thank you for going over all of those, the claims versus the facts that we know, Eric. Appreciate that. So yeah, we're just, our main concern is that using an on-site borrow area would disrupt that sand sharing system that Eric talked about earlier and could contribute to shore destabilization, putting our coastal communities and infrastructure at greater risk. So as we've been saying right now, there is, tremendous dune and vegetation growth on both sides of the slough. So on the seaward facing side and on the back side, which you can see here, this nice dune meadow. Um, so yeah, that's just one of our largest concerns is that it would destabilize this habitat that is forming in a healthy way. So that's one of the reasons we're opposing this project. This is a nice little, I think it's a blue crab that's swimming around in the slough. So we also oppose this project because it's kind of like throwing money into the water on a project that is not a guarantee to work. There's no guarantee that the slough will not form again. And there is a monitoring and maintenance plan in the project proposal right now. So I want to quote that for y'all. So it says, quote, this project proposes a monitoring and maintenance plan to include visual and photographic documentation of vegetation, visual inspection of project areas for erosion, and visual observation of stormwater management during and after rain events. The monitoring is proposed to occur quarterly over the first year, semi-annually over year 2, and annually over years 3, 4, and 5. During monitoring, if an area of impounded open water, so that's what the slough is being called in the application, so impounded open water is seen above the medium high water line, like the slough currently is, a follow-up monitoring event will be performed no more than 60 days later. If after this time the impounded water remains, a maintenance filling event would be implemented outside of sea turtle nesting season. So that means that, for 5 years, they're going to be monitoring this area. And if a slough wants to form again, they will fill it again. So that's just kind of, shows how beach renourishment projects are they're not simple. They often have to be done, multiple times over a long period of time to see the expected results. So this just again kind of begs the question if there are other methods to, navigate around this natural slough that has formed, maybe we should, utilize those solutions that would cost less money, that would not have to, be maintained over such a long period of time to, allow what the goals of the county are, which is, opening up better access to the ocean and making the beach safer. So we also are a little concerned, that if this permit was given by the Shore Protection Committee, it would set an irresponsible precedent for these beach renourishment projects. The Shore Protection Committee is only supposed to permit shoreline engineering activity for land alteration on beach projects that will restore a shoreline and that will minimize effects to the sand sharing system. This project does neither of those things. Um, because, like we have shown, the shore is stable and it would interfere with the sand sharing system. So we are concerned about that permit being granted. And like we have, said, there are just other goals. Or I'm sorry, the goals can be achieved through other means that are more friendly to all flora, fauna, and folk that love the East Beach area. So what can you do if you're concerned about the slough? We really encourage you to go sleuthing for yourself. I'm going to play a quick video that we took just to kind of show how dynamic this system is and what you can look for when you go sleuthing. So I'm going to play that real quick. Hey, this is Kat Montgomery. I'm out here at high tide at St. Simon's East Beach near the Massengale Park entrance. We can see the tide coming in. And, what's this? Walk with me.
So yeah, as Kat's walking, I'll give you a little overview. This is at a high tide event. We've got water coming into the slough, flooding in from the ocean. You can see the rack that's being deposited and has been deposited, carrying seeds and nutrition for those plants that are going to grow. Got some great colonizing plants there, some morning glory, some beach rosemary.
Some fast water. It's moving pretty fast.
Yeah, and it's flooding in,
Ah,
and that's your access right there.
it's going into the slough. Interesting. So yeah, we just went out there. That video was taken, I believe, 2 weeks ago at high tide, and the slough already looks so different since that video was taken. So yeah, we would just encourage you to go out there, take your own photos, look at where the runnels are. That's what I was doing, was just following the water to see where it was going, to show that the slough is, connected to the tide. You can include any pictures that you take in your public comment. We are encouraging folks to write in to the CRD, so that's the Coastal Resources Division's Shore Protection Committee. So they are accepting public comments on this project through October 30th. They will decide to give this permit or not at the next Shore Protection Committee meeting. We heard from the county when we were invited to that meeting in August that this project would go before the committee on November 14th. But we haven't seen that anywhere that meeting is happening. So once it's out there officially that that's the day of the meeting, we will let everyone know. The meetings are open to the public, and if you would like to comment during the meeting, you can sign up, and you have 3 minutes to share with the committee your thoughts on the project. So thank you. That's what I have for you today. So you can learn more by scanning our QR code that will take you to our page about the slough. So that's 100miles.org/slough, spelled SLOUGH. And that will take you to our fact sheet that really outlines kind of what we have discussed today. It also takes you to a form letter that you can submit to a CRD directly. You can add your own stuff to it if you'd like. You can send it as it is, but this QR code is where you will find all of that information. And if y'all would like to talk with me more about this, here is my contact info. You can text this phone number if that is helpful. So, yep, you can text me, you can email me, call me, beat me if you want to reach me, as they say. Don't beat me. I don't have a beeper. But yeah, thank you. Any questions?
Yeah, it looks like we don't have any questions at the moment, but a question that when this project was introduced to me that popped up, Kat, and something that I kind of was wondering about is that when we think about the request, that request for a permit comes from the county and they're asking a state agency for the permit. The state agency has control of that permit being granted. If the permit is not granted, what happens with this project?
If the permit is not granted, that means that, the project would not go through, at least as it has been presented. So, that doesn't mean that they couldn't, go back and create a new plan and submit it. But if the permit isn't granted, then they wouldn't be allowed to go forward with the plan that was made.
The other question that I had is for 100 miles roll. I know we typically, when these comment periods open up, we submit letters to CRD. Is there been letters submitted by other organizations? Can you tell me other involved organizations that might be speaking out against this or in favor of this project?
Sure. So I do believe that DNR is going to write a letter with concerns. I also believe that the Coastal Audubon Society is going to speak at the meeting to just, weigh in their concerns for how this project might affect shorebirds and wading birds. So I do know that they are involved. I believe Manomet is also, but I don't want to throw them out there if they weren't planning on speaking out, but I'm pretty sure they are also going to in regards to bird habitat.
Great,
Mhm.
great. So it sounds like we've got one question. Okay, the question is the one that we thought might happen and that we are not probably willing to speculate on, but I'll read out Elizabeth's question. Elizabeth says, "Are the hotels along this strip in favor of this project? If so, what is their role in this happening?" And I will answer that a little bit and then I'll pass it on to Kat. So at the moment, we do not know at whose bequest this may or may not have been happening. What we do know is that the county brought about this project as a way of removing this portion of the slough that would, be directly adjacent to those hotels and resorts and condos that are in that area. Um, the area impacted by the slough is adjacent to those areas and county property that is that Massengale Park. So when we think about access points, there is a public access point there, and that is the county's concern and how they are involved in that project from that standpoint. And
Right.
I'll put it to Kat if you have
Yeah.
anything else additionally.
Yeah, that is a good question. And it's just one, we don't have a direct answer for. The project was put forward again by the county and the consultant, Longleaf. So there's no, it's not like it was put forth by someone, at least in a official way. So we don't know. We can't, don't know about that. But yeah, so the area of the slough that would be filled is the south, again, the south side of or the southern portion of the slough, which is a little closer to those beach hotels and everything.
So Elizabeth Wright, has anyone educated these properties on the potential loss of hurricane protection? I think that that is a great way to think about this as the benefit of this natural system, Elizabeth. And I think we are utilizing this upcoming meeting as an opportunity to have a conversation with the stakeholders. Um, what is important to also note is that, when we think about these meetings are to get public input, but also the decision lands with the um, Coastal Protection Committee. So when we think about that permit being given, they are taking that into high account as well too. And so our role has currently been to interface with the public and to less so interface with those properties and property owners, but that is definitely something that we can look into as a potential to get them as educated as one may need to be if you have coastal property, right? Thank you for that follow-up. Awesome. I'm gonna just double check on Facebook um, to make sure there's no questions there. Again, if you're on Facebook, you can drop a question in the comments. We will read it out over here on Zoom. And it looks like we are good on that end.
I think that
So,
just means we did such a great job explaining
oh
the
yes, I
question.
think it is.
Mhm.
I think what I'd like to do is just to advance the next slide and echo what Kat said is that OHM is a small team and we're here to support you. If you know one of us, you know all of us, and you know me and you know Kat. She's given you her information, but for my information, it's right there up in the screen. Don't hesitate to call or email or text. What I do as part of my job is to interface with individuals and community groups about how to have their voices heard and to be best impactful to get your viewpoint on issues happening up and down the coast out there into the open, into the right ears. So please, please, please do reach out if you have any questions, any concerns about this project. We are always here to support in that way. The other thing I will say is that for those of you who enjoyed this presentation, who got a lot out of it, we will be passing on a recording of this and the presentation itself without our voices on top of it. If you'd like to just look at the pictures in an email. So for those of you on Facebook Live, if you'd like to reach out and grab one of our email addresses or just send us a direct message so we can get your information that way to be able to share this presentation with you. We will be also packaging it for viewing on YouTube. That usually takes a couple of days. So be looking for that. Shout it out on our social media. And you can always find more information about issues on your coast at 100miles.org/issues for our issue investigation series and what's going on around you. But thank you so much. And thank you so much to Kat for sharing her expertise on this issue. And it looks like, oh yeah, just a lot of thank yous and well prepared and kudos to us, Kat. Great job. We
Oh,
appreciate you
thanks.
all. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for coming
Awesome.
during, your lunch hour to learn more about this issue. Thank you.
Awesome. And I'm going to end things, and it's going to be a pretty abrupt ending. So, bye to all, and thanks again. And we look forward to interfacing you more in the future. Bye.